building and police the mask situation. So
That's a good point.
So I will say this morning, I'm pretty sure Sarah and I are the only two people on this floor. I have
probably
seen no one.
X-room is stuffed right now. There must be no less than, I don't know, 200-300 students in the building right now. It is a nightmare today.
Well, luckily, I mean, our kids have, I mean, I want to say that a lot of the professors like foreseen that, you know, after Thanksgiving, their students aren't going to do anything. So they had all their exams like either the week before Thanksgiving or the week of Thanksgiving. And they just had papers that were due if it was after they went home. Because I mean, I know if I was a student and I went home, I'd be like, turn it off.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
So, but yeah, then there's those students that, you know, they all, when it was Thanksgiving, they were always like, oh, I've got a bad grade. Maybe I could turn this around. No, son, you can't. At Thanksgiving, you're done.
Yeah, I teach 2 classes for U of L, and I have plenty of those students who woke up after Thanksgiving and realized there are things they were supposed to have done before that. So my email is inundated with projects and papers that were due weeks ago.
Right. And my favorite part is the students who will ask questions, especially on our chat, and be like, so I really need this article like now.
Yeah, like
Or
6 weeks ago.
I need this book right now. Can you just run up and get it for me? No. There's a whole process that you have to go through.
Right. My favorite was the student who's in my class this semester who I told 6 weeks ago to interlibrary loan a bunch of books that he needed. And he sent me an email like 3 days ago saying, you know about those books I was supposed to interlibrary loan? I know you work at the library. Can you hurry those up? And I was like, what are you talking about, pal? Students, man. Drive you nuts and pay for your job.
Well, it doesn't hurt that these are also all of the children who were helicoptered by their mother all the way through school until now. And now they still helicopter them and they talk to their college professors and the librarians.
Yeah, that was the first one that blew my
work.
mind. Yeah, I was having a teacher reach out about grades. That really blew my mind once, but luckily that doesn't happen very much anymore. Well, it looks like we're at 11 o'clock and we're the circulation crew for this meeting. I am your facilitator / moderator / I don't know what else the heck to call myself. John is our OCLC guru. And so basically what we did, guru-ish, according to his hand gesture, basically what we did in the first circulation session, and I see I have both Felix and Leah back from the first session, was largely talk about how COVID had impacted policies and it impacted your all circulation work. But I'm kind of open to, if you guys want to continue with that conversation, we can. If we want, I have a couple other things we could talk about as well, but I'll kind of open the floor up and see if there's any questions that you guys brought with you today to start. We'll start there. Don't all talk at once. I've gotten really good at staring into a Zoom monitor of my students and just saying Bueller over and over again until somebody says something to me. Andy Huff, I'll call on you. What are your circulation thoughts from this semester?
Well, it's been interesting to say the least. I'm glad that we have kind of figured out how we do it at U of L. You know, we've got our 72-hour turnaround time for check-ins, and we have contactless pickup option for people if they want to use it. But mostly, I like how creative we got with scanning items for people to check out. Have the barcode reader on the side, and then we can just scan the item through the plexiglass. So
that's a good point, Andy. You know, and if anybody else is directly handling items to patrons right now? Are there any other? I feel like U of L might be on a crazy train right now that we're doing that alone.
We are, especially with how many students we have in the building right now.
I know we are. You and me
Playing
both,
with
man.
fire.
Every time Andy and I walk past each other in the building, we're just shaking our heads anymore, it feels like. Let's see. Felix, I know, Felix, if you're there, I know Kornhauser has a very different setup right now. Feel like my moderating skills have deteriorated in the last hour. Let's see here. What else can we talk about? John, do you have are there any CERC things that you think that it would be good for us to, any of the new CERC updates that you would throw out there that we could talk about? I think Digby would be a really cool one, but if you have others, that'd be good.
Digby is always a good one, although there is a specific Digby session first thing tomorrow morning.
Right.
Aside from the COVID and the curbside and all the stuff we talked about in the last session, I'm curious about the impact of the new pickup locations work. If folks have looked at that, if that's going to have impact on how you profile your pickup locations. We're curious if there are new models that this might help with, things, smart lockers, delivery services for faculty. So wanted to start there and find out if that work is resonating with you guys, or if you've even been aware of it.
See, John, it's not just me, I guess.
Everyone's ready for lunch is what this is.
I think it's what it is, the 11 o'clock lunch session. Well, here, I got another question, and I'll leave this one out to the bigger group. Are there any services you guys changed this fall that you plan on either changing back in the spring or that you're going to be reimagining for the spring?
Everybody didn't hear this earlier, but Leah mentioned that we are still doing 4-hour laptop checkouts at our desk. That's primarily one of the only things that we are checking out. Besides, we do calculators as well, because those seem to be the needs of our students, that they need them just right then for just a few moments, and then they'll just bring it back. But we will probably change that. I don't know if we'll change it in the spring very much, because I do know that half of our computers, because we're opening up one of our branches, the business library. So we've had all of their laptops as well. So what it'll do is we'll take half of those laptops and then send them back to their original location. So it might change the way we do cleaning processes, but that's probably the only thing that will happen, is that it will change just how fast the turnaround is that we do our cleaning.
What, in terms of the laptop checkouts, have you found that patrons have wanted more time with them? Has it been, they pretty much are happy with as it is? Have they expressed, I mean, because we have laptops and we've shut off laptop checkout for the entire semester and kicked people to the desktop computers. Have you found any experiences with the laptops in particular?
Well, the main thing we have is we have long-term checkouts for the students who are in desperate need of having some sort of computer, because especially our university, we have a lot of lower income students that come in from Eastern Kentucky. So we have a program where the professor will nominate a student, and they will send in their information and say this student is in need and they need this laptop for the whole semester. But that's the only way that the student can get a long-term laptop, is they have to be nominated by one of their professors or a faculty member on campus. The students that have the long-term laptops are aware of this, so they'll just go to a professor and say, hey, I really need this because I don't have a computer, or I had a computer and it broke. So we have that program, as well as the 4-hour checkout that we have that's in the library. Now, the 4-hour checkout that we have it's just the same as we've always had, and they can use them off campus, so they can come in, they can get the laptop, and they can still leave the library with it. So that's not changed. The only thing that we've added is that long-term checkout for the students. And we also partner with another program on campus, the Geeks, the IT Geeks. They are also doing long-term laptops, so if we don't have them, we can pass them along to the Geeks as well. So there's been a great need. We've had to turn people away. So
how many laptops do you allocate to both of those groups overall?
Ooh.
A ballpark would be, I'm just kind of interested.
Like we, on a daily basis, there's 15 to 20-ish that we circulate for the 4-hour. We're not super hard and fast on the 4-hour part. As long as they bring it back by the end of the day, we don't really say too much about that.
Right.
I don't know about the long term. I have no idea how many.
The long term, I want to say that we had maybe 30 or 40.
Wow.
Because, well, we were kind of in a different situation because we were we were on the end of our term of these laptops. So we had all of our older laptops, and then we got a set of new ones during the summer. So those new ones that we got during the summer, we were then available to turn those into our 4-hour laptops. So, but we've been able to purge some of those ones as they went as well, because we had a lot of battery issues. So what do you, Leah, do we have like 30 or 40 that were long-term laptops?
I had a phone call and had to take it, so I had to step away. So I missed. I don't know. What are we talking about?
Our long-term laptops. He asked how many do you think that we, I would say 30 or 40, the long-term.
Oh, yeah, there was probably about 30, but now these were older ones. And so we've had some that have died. So coming into this or going into the spring, I don't know how many we really have that. I mean, we'll have probably 25.
Right.
I'm assuming long-term is semester long as a definition. Interesting. And have you guys had any, this is something Ekstrom has talked about for years and never pulled the trigger on. Have you had any issues with them not coming back at the end of the semester? I'm assuming because they're linked to a person and a faculty member, that's pretty much not an issue.
Well, I will say this, like in March, we had one student in particular who is deaf, and he had to have a Mac because our HPs did not work well with a deaf user. It had to have this specific program on it, and the Mac has it on it. So he had the laptop from the spring semester, so in March, and we just kind of continued it on because he had summer classes, and so into this fall. So he brought it back, I want to say the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so but I was in contact with him the whole time, and I was like, hey, do you need this over the break, or do you need this over are you taking classes during the summer? So I was able to communicate with him and just kind of continue it on. And he brought it back. No, there was no problems with it. So, I mean, our students they know that they need the device. So I think they treat it like it's their own. So.
It's an interesting idea. We might just, every time you guys come up with a good idea at EKU, we're just going to call it the EKU borrowed program from U of L. Andy, I think we might steal that idea from them. What do you think?
Did Misty explain that we have to have a faculty member request that?
Yeah, I really like that idea. It does give quite a bit of ownership both to the faculty member and to the student. That's always been our issue is, I think, and Andy can correct me, our laptops are locked down so that if they leave the building, not only does the building freak out, but the laptops lose, I think, wireless connectivity as well. So we would have to do
that too.
Do that. Interesting.
We just program long-term to work off campus. So short-term work only on campus, whether you're in the building or outside of the library, but the long-term work are programmed to work off campus.
Interesting. U of L did a program this semester where I think they purchased like 700 laptops for students who had a demonstrable financial need, obviously completely outside of the library. But I think, our laptops have kind of just sat all semester with no usage. This might be a better way to use them. On the same token, do you guys check out DVDs in your library or physical films? Have you stopped that this semester, or have you left that pretty much as is?
No, we've left it as is. It's just we forced all of our collections to go through our interlibrary loan department. So our collections are closed to anyone but staff. So only staff can be on our 4th floor where all of our main collection is. And the books and things are only pulled by our student workers and our staff. So that's how we've tried to keep, I guess, so germs don't get on everything. That's how we've tried to keep it safer. But no, we've checked out everything as usual.
Did you guys get any faculty pushback on that? We talked briefly about shutting our stacks down, and the campus faculty threw such a fit that it went right back out the door.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of faculty members that, came in and were a little put out that they couldn't go up there and get it. But, when I usually get called up front at that point, and I just say, look, most libraries closed and we've remained open because of this. And this is a sacrifice we all have to make. to be open. And then usually once they get to that point, they're like, yeah, you're right. Okay. We understand it, and they move on.
Interesting. I feel like every sentence now is, man, I wish we were doing it that way. But, the faculty at U of L were so that there was never an option. And we actually, to the OCLC side of it, I actually really like the shelf browse you can do from the discovery page. And we've been trying to push more of that, but I don't know if that's just an old school thing. People like to browse. I like to physically browse too, but because we have a big problem that our stacks, both on the third and fourth floor, are basically surrounded by student study tables. And while we've taken a lot of them out, generally what we've seen is the faculty have generally decreased the amount of time they're in the building while the students have increased it. And so I'm curious, well, we'll have to, it's an interesting idea.
Well, speaking of that, I will say there's this one, I think it's a staff member, it might be a faculty member in the College of Ed, I'm not for sure. But now she is someone who's a browser, and she loves to read our popular fun reads collection, and it is on the main floor. And so I just have whiteboards up in front of it, like this collection is closed. And so she does come in and stands back behind the whiteboard and looks at the shelf, and then goes back to her office and requests.
It's hard to argue with that. I will say everybody is very creative when they try and get around these things. We've learned that over the semester.
I'm like, she's not touching them. It's okay.
Yeah, as long as she's not touching, it's no big deal. It's interesting. Our stacks have basically been pretty much free form since July when we opened back up. And we have a lot of closed storage as well. And that's helped us, in terms of mitigating stuff. But we literally, I just walked past my students on the way back to Starbucks for the 8th time today. And, we have glass partitions up, and that's pretty much, we've been basically doing what I'd call the same checkout procedure since, July 1st. And frankly, I don't think it's the safest way to do it, but given just the sheer volume of students and staff that are still in the building, did you guys shut off, and I feel like it's become a U of L EKU conversation, which is more than fine. Did you guys shut off community access to the buildings?
Yes.
Yes. Did you have any mechanism for if they need items? Are you doing contactless pickup for community members, or just completely shut off for now?
We have, so as far as, even if it's a retiree, they still have an EKU ID number and they can request items. For people that need to use our special collections and archives, they schedule an appointment with that group or that department, and then special collections and archives, someone from their staff will come in on the day of the appointment and meet with them. And so we just have that in a Google form where they've requested that appointment. And actually, I think that's moving into spring to using the LibCal, because we use LibCal for everything like that. So then we have record of who was in the building that would not have had a 900 number. But as far as that, any other community member, we've just said nobody is allowed. But if someone needed to come in, I guess we would take it by community. We just say no and they don't. So
we've also had from our, I guess, admissions department, they still bring in tours. So, I mean, you see groups of 10 or 15 hustling through the building, but we don't say the student that is over the group swipes in. And since those people are on record on campus by signing in where they signed in for the tour, the campus tour, they are technically signed in. So they all have that student worker that's with them, and they swiped in. So we know what time that they were in the building and how long they were in. So we do have that record somewhere on campus if we need to. So
yeah, we can reach out to that department and just say, on this day around this, what tours came in, who was in that tour. If there was like a major outbreak here that we needed to let people know. So.
I keep seeing emails from U of L admins that say no non-essentials on campus, and yet the tour groups keep coming through with such regularity that I'm beginning to wonder what the definition of essential is, but that's neither here nor there. Let's see, where else are we on our list of things to chat about? Oh, I got an oddball one. Do you guys check out through your circulation functions? Do you check out chargers or phone chargers, anything like that? Have you continued doing that? And I guess, are you sanitizing them? Or are you quarantining?
Well, I hate to be the only one. Is it just EKU and U of L on here? I'm sorry. I don't want to hijack this breakout.
We got John.
I think, well, yeah, and OCLC, but because I think Richard, Felix, and Carrie, is it possible they just didn't log out of the breakout session list?
No, Richard's with me.
Felix Kornhauser.
This is Felix.
There's Felix.
Okay, great.
He's another U of L guy, though. So many of us U of L crew. Carrie?
I'm here.
We're bogarting
Russia.
things. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm a chatty Cathy, to say the least. There's Felix. Felix or Carrie, do you have anything you'd like to chat about specifically?
We are charging out chargers. It's heavily used. We have quite a number of chargers, different kinds of laptops, cell phones, those kinds of things. And we quarantine for 3 days. So we have some boxes, day 1, day 2, day 3 kind of thing, and we just sort of move them through there. So that's what we're doing. But we're not circulating a whole lot of stuff. I mean, we're basically a study hall, is what we are. And our biggest work is interlibrary loan, of course. You know, that's where we spend all of our time, is ILL. And
are you doing physical interlibrary loan or just articles and?
No, we're doing physical.
Physical.
As well. But traditionally, it's always been a very small number. So in a week, we're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7 items a week. So it's not a huge number.
Have you seen any jump down there in terms of your numbers during COVID, up or down?
In terms of ILL, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's steady.
Steady.
You know, it's still the same. You know, we have one staff person who will do all our lending in our scanning, and he will also do all our shelving. Since we don't do a lot of physical material checkout off of from our circulation desk, one person pulling and shelving for ILL has been sufficient. You know? So it's been working out pretty good. And it's James. James is doing it. He's our ILL person. So. But we're talking about, in terms of lending, maybe 30, 40 items a day in terms of articles. So it's been pretty steady. I mean, in terms of physical articles, I mean, overall, we're talking a whole lot more. In terms of lending and borrowing, we're in around 70 or something a day. So.
Thank you, Felix. Richard or Carrie, do you want to jump in? That's okay. I like to hear the sound of my own voice, so I'm fine still chatting.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was curious and we talked in the last session a little bit about how libraries are reacting to things like contract tracing and so on among patrons. I was curious, first of all, generally about how folks are, whether you like the idea of the staff audit trail that we're bringing in, which is optional, but like a library being able to turn that on and see which staff member edited this item records, and when they did it. And second, if there's any implications, any corona implications for that, this cataloger tests positive, you have a record of all the materials that they've touched. Not sure if folks had thought on that, or if they're interested in staff audit trail, or you've lived this long without it in WMS, so it's not really a thing.
Well, I don't want to always be the one jumping in, since we're supposed to be moderating, not just talking my butt off. But I know our tech services head is very excited about this, because she is, what's the polite way to put this? She really likes when she can track who's screwed up items. So she's extremely excited for this. You know, one of the things that we have noticed up in the circulation department, like I'll see what you guys think. We have had not a high number, it's definitely been a decreasing number of items that weren't in the system when you go to check them out, and you get that you know, missing item note essentially. And so I have found especially that it's really nice to be able to back check who is creating these in the moment and then touching them. Because sometimes when you get one of these, you know, no barcode items, what people will put into the system when they go to create an item for the first time can sometimes be pretty much wild, to say the least. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, and Lord knows tech services can't wait.
Yeah, and what you've just described is the main use case that we were asked for, which is this specific thing has been messed up. Who did it? And then there's a secondary use case, which is if you have items moving through tech services, new items, and you need to find them because a faculty member really wants it or something, the log sort of tells you whose desk it's on or whose desk it was on last. So, you know, the receiving people touch it, the invoicing people touch it, the catalogers got it, you know. So that's also why we're seeing this as kind of a where is this now, so people can grab new materials. We're starting with the items, and then, you know, we have the option to broaden it out to do things like show me everything the staff member has done. But the beginning is the entry point is the item record. I'm looking at this item and I either need to find it or, you know, find out who's been messing with it.
Do we have an ETA on when we'll have that second part of it, when we can follow by the staff as opposed to by the item?
We do not have an ETA on it. It's unlikely it will be within the next calendar year. So we're probably looking at calendar year 22 for the second phase.
Interesting.
But first phase is coming in 21.
Right.
I know in our circulation, we always kind of go to the record and see who was the person who checked it in and who was the person that checked it out. So we kind of already, this is the person that messed it up. This is the person.
So you do it through the transactions logs rather than the edit logs.
Yeah, that's how we do it as well. Well, our tech services head would have been very comfy as one of the, you know, one of the judges during the Salem witch trials. So she's very excited. I'm teasing a lot. She's my mother, so I'm allowed to say all these things. Instead of me just insulting some random person. She's very excited about this functionality because I'll leave it at that. It's interesting, you know, we do, Misty, to your point, we do a lot of our stuff by back checking the circulation transaction tabs. How long do you all keep your transaction data on in that spot?
A month, maybe a month.
A month, okay, interesting.
2 weeks.
Maybe 2 weeks.
I think it's 2 weeks.
It just
Have you
depends.
considered extending that at all? I think ours is set at like 1.5 years, actually. Did you have we had the most contentious like 6-month debate about this number. Did you guys just kind of say a couple weeks?
I think that was a Todd King decision.
I think it was a Todd thing. I think.
I've heard Todd things.
But honestly, the 2 weeks, I mean, if you need to catch something within that time period, 2 weeks is usually it. But if you go to the item, it keeps it longer.
Right.
So if you just go to the student's record or the faculty's record or staff's record, it's 2 weeks, because I guess I'm pretty sure that that's because of the Patriot Act. But honestly, if you go to the item, that's all you really need, because especially if it's like, if a book comes in damaged and the person who checked it in, if it was a student, didn't really notice it right offhand, and then you get it and then you have to go back, usually it's enough time that you can kind of see, you can see who the last person that checked out that book is still on the item record. So that's just always worked for us. The 2 week period that's usually you're scrambling which student worker did it.
I know that feeling. You haven't had faculty or anything like that who have requested old circulation records of theirs we sometimes have faculty want to see their old circ stuff.
I just hit them with that Patriot Act and say, I'm sorry, we don't keep those records.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I think the transaction log is good for busting patrons who did something to the actual material. The staff audit trail is for busting staff who did something to the metadata. So
I like
we're
that,
trying to
busting
cover
staff.
all our bases. Right.
So basically, not circulation.
John, I think you guys should call it the busting staff program instead
You
of.
think that was?
I think that's much more clear as to what it's used for. Hey, Richard. How are you?
Our cataloging department, there used to be a lady that worked in there where material would go to die on her desk because, you know, she was in charge of processing things and it would never arrive where it was supposed to go. And so you just go and look on her desk and, oh, it's only been there for 2 years. So yeah.
Andy and I
So
have a
it
staff
would be
member
good to be, it would be good to be able to tell who, you know, who's the last person to mess with something in the catalog.
That's a use case for this for sure.
Yeah, Andy and I have a staff member whose desk is called the Island of Misfit Books, that just things just disappear into that world. That this will be very useful to be able to back check. I'll say that. I see Felix
Good.
nodding. I have a feeling Felix knows exactly who I'm referring to.
So it actually, it sounds like reporting, which I was asked about in the opening session, is going to be useful, not just spot check this item, what's been going on with it, but show me all the items that are at this desk or were last touched by this person or that kind of thing.
Well, John, you've been working with librarians for so long, you know how much we love to be able to back check each other on the smallest stuff. I mean.
Okay, so I was
You're
not
right.
aware that you couldn't already tell who was the last person to touch it or who could do this. So currently I feel so much better about any and all records I have touched in the past 5 years that might be insane. So I
You're
appreciate
safe.
that.
You've
Currently,
got about 6 months to clean up your act though, and then it's going to be public record.
I can do this.
Oh, that's good. Well, let's see what else. Does anybody have any questions before I jump into another topic? Thoughts?
Well, it might be a little blue sky, but again, I was curious if you guys see any application for the staff audit trail to help with, gosh, we had a infected person handling these many books. Would that be an instant, put it on the 7-day quarantine truck?
Well, my thing with that, a lot of the time when I am working with records, I don't pull the physical book. I don't have it in my possession. I just go into the records. So it would show that I have worked on, like I've been working on a project where I'm going in and putting in clickable metadata tags in our series books. I don't need the books really for that because our students a couple of years ago went through and pulled all the books that look like series books because they're darling, and I'm pretty sure they cursed me under their breath for a few months. But I put a public note in there at that time. So now I can just pull a report of those notes and do it that way. So I'm not actually touching the books.
So this might be another case where the transaction logs might be a better indicator of whether someone's actually touched the thing. Okay.
Have you found, Kayla, in that case, have you had any issues with items that you've changed that, well, I guess you guys have closed stacks or open stacks, closed stacks, so it's easier to know.
Well, currently
closed. Have you had any issues with items that you worked in the metadata that you went to go find later and they just weren't there, even though you were working on the metadata? No. I guess we have a higher percentage of items just kind of wander off the shelf then, which seems to be particularly us.
Oh,
I mean,
we have things that walk away.
They do, but it's I don't necessarily go to find them after I've been working on the metadata. So
Fair enough.
they could not be on the shelf at that time, and I have no idea that they're not on the shelf. So
Yeah, we had someone dropping bags of books out windows a couple of years ago and selling them on eBay.
Even with the EKU symbol all over them, I'm assuming?
Oh, nursing books are expensive, so
That's true.
they will.
Yeah,
That's how we tracked them down, was with the EKU.
Nobody's going to rat
stamps.
somebody out for getting a book for $20 if it cost them $200 in the bookstore.
Well, I'll tell you the one time my favorite thing that happened, we had somebody who stole a laptop of ours and then they brought it back to us to fix the Wi-Fi after we disabled the Wi-Fi. That was an all-timer for me. I just remember her handing the laptop to me and I'm looking at it and looking at her and looking at it and looking at her like, are you serious right now? Neither here nor there. but to answer John's question, you know, we and you know, obviously I'm gonna be very careful here because of HIPAA. We've had several people in our department test positive, both students and staff members. And basically the way that U of L's process has gone for that is that first they have to report to their boss, then they have to report to campus health. And, you know, I got to tell you that we've largely been lucky that the ones who have tested positive, none of the three were working the desk that day. So none of the three either picked it up the day that they tested positive. All of them seem to have picked it up elsewhere and come to work. And so we haven't had any issue with back checking any items they work because they weren't working with items those days. So it's a good question, John. And at least so far for us, we haven't had an opportunity, or not an opportunity, that's the wrong word. We haven't had an issue with having to check it. I don't know about you guys though.
Yeah, and Kayla's clarification was very helpful that in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, if you're not actually circulating, you're working with the metadata and the book doesn't have to be in hand. I'm seeing nodding, so yeah, that helps.
Well, all right. John, do you have any others you want to throw out there to our happy little crew?
Well, depending if people are planning to attend the Digby session, could certainly touch on that a little bit with this group. I'll, you know, defer to the gang here. Are you Digby users, first of all?
I didn't know what it was.
I used it this summer. One of my projects to keep me busy, I was in the music library inventorying all the material, and I used the Digby app. First, I used it on my phone, and then they got me an iPad to use, and it works pretty well. Although I wish it had like maybe a higher limit on, you know, because you can only do 1,000 records before you have to save it.
Yeah,
it would be handy if that were higher.
Yeah, we'd love to bump it up, but since we're sort of all on the phone, we start to bump into those limitations. The kind of thing that as the device tech improves, you'll see that limit go up. It's, you know, it's not in the software, but it's a good takeaway. And I was curious if that's something, because we've heard a lot about, you know, the service was limited, the in building visits are down and print circulations are down. I thought it might be a ripe time for libraries to be doing things like inventory projects. Is that the flip side of that is you got to be in the library to do an inventory project. So I wasn't sure how you guys are managing the trade.
Well, when I did the music library, I mean, the music library was closed. It was just me in there. And then I work in the business library branch. And so I did that inventory first, because we were also closed. So, you know, it was never an issue. I could just go in there and scan books all day and not have to worry about dealing with anybody.
Sounds like
to use it again,
nice way to
actually.
spend the summer. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry too. I think we spoke at the same time. We're getting ready to use it again because I know for the last little bit we've been using Digby to do different projects. And so we're doing I hate to admit it, a mold cleanup problem from the music library. So as we clean, we'll be using it. I actually have the iPad that they just set up to use for that on my couch here in my office to start working on that. So
Got it.
There was one hiccup that I would come across when I would doing the inventory. If I scanned a book, but I had lost my connection, I think is how that worked. And then I regained the connection, it wouldn't let me scan that book again until I had scanned a different book.
Yeah, I believe that it's the AMP is not very resilient right now to lost connections. It kind of assumes it's always live. You know, tech team has talked a lot about building at least a little bit of state into it, which might prevent that from happening. But right now it's completely, as soon as you lose the connection, it doesn't react that well. It's a little brittle.
Yeah, I mean,
surprise.
You know, it was annoying, but you know, once I figured it out, you know, like it wasn't that big of a deal. But
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. It's again, that's great feedback. I love hearing from people who've actually, you know, been using it heavily. I'm curious if the staff checkout feature resonated with folks at all, or if you're still on the desktop circulations.
That's where we're still at.
Okay.
You know, and this is kind of, I know we've talked about this before to a different degree, is we're really interested in a patron, you know, self-checkout option. And obviously, you know, I don't know if Digby doesn't work for that, obviously, since it's staff focused. But, you know, we experimented briefly with trying to create like a profile that would let us use a public facing machine, but we haven't had any real success with that, largely because the profiles allow for far too much information access on the patron side.
Right.
But, you know, I know that's a long-term hope of ours, is there might be a self-checkout option.
Yeah, and so our plan for patron-facing self-check is through our acquisition of Capira. So that supports. They have a Capira mobile, which does a bunch of stuff, but part of it is a self-check function. And we've been doing a lot of testing this fall on them getting access to the patron accounts and SIP2 and all that good stuff. So that is imminent for WMS. But it is, you know, it's not going to be baked in. There'll be the cost for the Capira app.
See, now I'm a moderator and I'm learning things. This is the perfect way to do it. Let's see here. We got a few more. Go ahead, Kayla. Sorry.
In the past, we've done pop-up libraries and around campus, and we've taken a laptop with us to do the checkouts. But inevitably, technology crashes. And there was one, it was a good 20 minutes before the laptop decided to boot up and let us log in. And we had people wanting to check books out. I logged on to WMS on my phone because it was faster than waiting on this laptop, and checked somebody out on my phone. So this could be a good instance for using Digby for that if we ever can do pop-up libraries again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Although since WMS, we try to be responsively designed, it's, you know, the fallback is always just use a browser on a device. But yeah, Digby's meant to be, you know, the user experience tries to be as slick as possible.
You know, we've actually, you know, we didn't use Digby initially when we first downloaded it all that much because like we've said, the functionality initially wasn't all that great, but it's become much more heavily used by our stacks maintenance department, who does all the inventories and who does a lot of this back checking. We haven't obviously used it a ton in circulation since we've mostly just been still in our same spot, still in our same computers. But our stacks maintenance crew definitely uses it, especially for inventory with some regularity just on their phones. And even the student assistants are fine downloading an app. That's easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's anecdotal support for what we've seen in the statistics is the adoption and use of Digby really exploded when we added the inventory function. I think libraries are finding it maybe more useful. I think Leo was saying it's sort of a project-based tool. That's kind of what the numbers are showing us. We'd love for it to be baked into the day-to-day of student workers, pulling and reshelving stuff. It seems to be a project tool as much as anything else, which works for us. It makes me wonder how well used the shelf reading function will be. There's at some point, there's only so much that you can help with the shelf reading process on a phone, but that'll be coming out early in the new year.
Well, I mean, unless you guys want to invent a shelf reading thing where you just, you know, do it for us, that'd be great. I can't stand shelf reading. My eyes go numb.
Yeah, I still remember the crick in my neck from being a student worker.
It's the best part about growing up. You get to have the students do all the work for you.
That's right.
Let's see here. Are there any other thoughts? We have a couple more minutes left before our session comes to an end. That's okay. Well, any big holiday plans? That's all I got right now.
Just hide from the world.
Exactly
Yes,
right.
well said.
I'm pretty sure that you can see that I've been living that life since the
He's
day
ready.
after Halloween. So
Well, it looks like Brandy has called us back to the main room, so I think we can adjourn this wonderful circulation meeting. Thank you all for participating. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
everybody.
Thank you,
all.
everybody. I'll catch you back in the main room. Stop recording.